We're only 3 months away from iOS 19 Beta 1 and WWDC 2025, and recently we got our biggest rumor yet for iOS 19. According to Mark Gurman, iOS 19, iPadOS 19, and macOS 16 will be seeing the biggest redesign since iOS 7, which includes a full visionOS-like makeover for the whole system. This is a huge deal, and we've gotten our first look at it a few weeks ago. Let's talk about it. visionOS, the software for Apple Vision Pro, is based on a design aesthetic known as glass morphism. This is where the software looks like frosted glass. It's a design aesthetic that much of the industry is moving towards, and it looks like Apple is playing in as well. We've even seen some hints at this design in some of Apple's recent apps. The Apple Sports app, released last year, had some design elements that very much resemble visionOS. And most recently, the Apple Invites app has a new design elements that feel very close to visionOS. So Apple has been planting the seeds for an iOS redesign for a while now, but what would a design like this look like on an iPhone? Well, we got a little preview of it recently. John Prosser at FPT shared this first look at iOS 19's camera app. Ignoring the design aesthetic for a second, the camera app will be getting a major, much-needed overhaul this year. Now, most of the controls will be in this one organized space with the easy ability to switch between photo and video mode. This is a very needed redesign of the camera app as it's been getting way too cluttered now. But you may have also noticed the design of the camera app. It looks rather familiar, doesn't it? That's because it indeed looks like visionOS. The buttons, menus, everything looks one-to-one with what visionOS looks like. A fresh coat of paint for the iPhone, the first time since iOS 7. Nearly 12 years now. Now granted, obviously we've evolved a lot since iOS 7, but the overall UI design remains identical. But that'll be until just a few months from now. But remember, it's not just iOS getting the redesign this year. iPadOS 19 is also getting redesigned this year. This makes sense as iOS and iPadOS at the system level core are very identical. But with iPadOS 19, many exclusive features to the iPad will be taking great advantage of this new design. Most notably to me is Stage Manager. What I imagine is the windows you see with Stage Manager, but with the glass-morphic touch of visionOS. Apps on visionOS appear in a floating window. Stage Manager on the iPad is floating windows on the iPad. This makes too much sense to give this specific feature a visionOS touch. But what's even more interesting is the redesign coming to macOS with macOS 16. This is rather surprising because you may have remembered the last time macOS got a redesign, which wasn't that long ago, macOS Big Sur back in 2020. Not only was that a redesign from the outside, it was also redesigned at the core to pave the way for Apple Silicon and the M1 chip. That was only 5 years ago, which for macOS wasn't that long ago. Before, the design from OS X Yosemite back in 2014 lasted 6 years, from 2014 through 2020. And before that, the original Aqua design for macOS X remained identical from the original macOS X Cheetah release. So from 2020 to 2025, this would be the fastest we've seen macOS go from one redesign to another. But considering how much the Mac has grown in popularity since 2020 with the M1 and macOS Big Sur, a complete redesign would make sense, especially since Windows went through a big redesign a few years ago with Windows 11, and likely another in a few years with Windows 12. But of course, it's not just the UI, it's also going to be the app icons as well. Last year, iOS 18 got some customization options for the existing app icons we've had. But even though this was a big step forward, it wasn't a full redesign of the app icons. It was just evolving upon the app icons we've had since 2013. But with iOS 19, iPadOS 19, and macOS 16, we will be getting a complete redesign of the app icons, again, likely closely resembling Vision OS. Now in Vision OS, when you hover over an app icon with your eyes, elements of the icon will pop out. This is obviously possible on Vision OS thanks to the 3D displays on Vision Pro, which obviously don't exist on the iPhone, iPad, and Mac, so it's pretty unlikely for us to be getting something like that. However, some people have been wondering if the icons will be going circular this year, just like on Vision OS. For the iPhone and iPad, this would be a very bold move, as the icons on the home screen have remained the rounded rectangle shape for 18 years now. But for the Mac, it actually makes sense. If you were a Mac user before 2020, you may have remembered that the Mac app icons used to be more circular. But when Big Sur came out in 2020, the icons moved towards the rounded rectangle shape, just like iOS and iPadOS. This was a move playing into the Apple Silicon transition that started with Big Sur, as this was one way to make the Mac more integrated with the iPhone and iPad. But some people do miss the old circular icons. And with Vision OS having circular icons, maybe the Mac may move back to that aesthetic later this year, but we'll have to see. Now, of course, there's more coming to these platforms than just a complete UI redesign. Of course, we will see some new Apple Intelligence features, though we may not see many new ones, as this year will primarily be a redesign year for Apple platforms. In addition, RCS on the iPhone will be getting some major improvements this year. With iOS 18, RCS was brought to the iPhone, but with some limitations. RCS on the iPhone right now does not support editing or deleting messages, nor does it support custom emoji reactions or even end-to-end encryption, features we've been used to with iMessage for years. That's because the version of RCS Apple is using with iOS 18 is the RCS Universal Profile version 2.4, which came out all the way back in October of 2019. But the other day, RCS Universal Profile 3.0 was announced, and its biggest new feature is end-to-end encryption, which Apple confirmed that they will be using RCS Universal Profile 3.0 in a software update later this year, which likely means iOS 19. With the upgrade to UP 3.0, that also means the other upgrades from past versions of RCS, like editing and deleting messages and custom emoji reactions. In addition, we'll obviously see software updates to Apple's other platforms, like watchOS 12, tvOS 19, and new AirPods software, which is said to include a live translate feature, and Vision OS 3, which is said to be a very feature-packed release for Apple Vision Pro. All of these OS updates will be announced at WWDC 2025 in early June. We should be expecting an announcement for WW here in the next few days, so keep your eyes peeled. So, that's what to expect from iOS 19 and all of Apple's new 2025 software updates. What are you most looking forward to from Apple's new updates? Let me know in the comments.